My name is Moustapha Azzouzi, as said, and thank you very much for this. Ladies and gentlemen, without access to sustainable mobility, it will be much, much harder, if not possible, to end poverty and achieve also the SDGs. Today, we have a congestion in cities, in rural area, and also we have many, many problems around the world concerning the sustainable mobility. And today I will speak about the sustainable urban mobility planning in Morocco as a good experience, and we will learn from it. And I might suggest the following agenda. First of all, we will talk a bit about Morocco fact sheet and also introduce the sustainable urban mobility plan in general. And we will also learn from some case studies before ending this presentation with conclusions and some reflections. Well, first of all, Morocco has a growing population of 36 million and a large vehicle stock exceeding 4.3 million vehicles. Half registered vehicles are in Casablanca and Rabat regions. We will talk about this later, with a growth of 6% per year. The importance of the transport sector in Morocco can be appreciated by the place it occupies at the economic and social levels, as it represents around 6% of GDP and 9% of the added value of the tertiary sector, and it employs about like 10% of the urban working population. In addition, the revenue of its taxation contributes 15% to the revenue of the national budget. In speaking, the transport sector consumes around 40% of the country's final energy. It accounts for 60% of total emission and 28% of energy model emissions. With the evolution of the activities, the economic growth, and the growth of the motorization in general, the country expects energy consumption and emissions to grow by 350% in the next 20 years. More, over 5 million ton carbon equivalent is the projected trends of the greenhouse emissions related to transport activities in Morocco in 2050. Speaking about the sustainable urban mobility planning, I should mention that Morocco has, first of all, been committed for several years to making its sustainable development a social project. In 2016 and 17, the country is underlying this commitment through the key actions. First of all, the organization of the climate conference, COP22, in November 2016 in Marrakech city, and the submission of its nationally determined contribution, NDCs, to the UNFCCC, raising or fixing the percentage of 45.5% greenhouse gas emission reduction by 2030, as well as the adoption of the Great National Strategy for Sustainable Urban Mobility 2023 in June 2017. And since 2018, Morocco has a clear roadmap for sustainable mobility, which was developed in collaboration with the German cooperation, GIZ, and the Paris process on mobility and climate. Its objective is to bring out a shared vision of people and goods mobility which gives access to economic and social opportunities through an affordable, energy efficient, and low in emission transport system that respects, of course, the environment and the population. I had the honor to have contributed to this to the development of this roadmap at that time. Based on this national vision and its objectives, sector strategies have been updated also and accordingly. A key characteristics of Morocco is its progressive development of institutional, legal, and regulatory framework, characterized by decarbonization and autonomy of municipalities. And I can name a few, such as, for example, the amendment of the municipal charter, allowing, of course, the improvement of service management mechanisms through the grouping of agglomerations, which means the consolidation of the inter-municipal character, pooling of resources, and etc. Such as, for example, now we have the grouping of agglomeration named Al-Asima. It includes Rabat, the city of Rabat, the city of Saleh, and the city of Timara. SDL, or what we call local development companies, أو شركة التنمية المحلية. Also, this was also introduced at that time. So municipalities can create what we call a local development agency or company owned by the municipality and also shared by the private sector maybe, to oversee economic activity of the municipality, including public transportation. This there are the creation and organization of what we call the urban transport authorities, and also the creation of local public companies with the associated state dedicated to the, in general, to the realization of mass transport projects, such as, for example, Casa Transport Company or Rabat Saleh Tramway Company. Given the importance of investments required to meet demand through the mass public transport system, Morocco has developed a sustainable financing mechanisms limited to, of course, of capacity, but seems efficient. These mechanisms include the following. First, the establishment of a framework favorable to public-private partnership approach. Also, there is the establishment of a national fund dedicated to finance urban public transportation, called FART, and managed by a directorate responsible for local collectivities and municipalities with the Ministry of Interior. Also, the mobilization of sustainable funds to finance infrastructure and develop public transport. Also, the involvement of multilateral development banks and private investors is one of the sustainable mechanisms. To note that municipalities can seek also funding through foreign and domestic investments. So what are the main features of the Moroccan experience in sustainable mobility? One of the first steps in the implementation of the urban mobility plan in major Moroccan cities, favoring the development of public urban transport, the reduction of private car traffic, and the development of mass transport, public transport, such as, for example, BRTs, bike lines, tramways, etc. A great initiative at the beginning is related to what we call Mobilize Your City, which is an initiative that was launched in 2017 in 4 major cities in Morocco, and aiming, first of all, promoting urban mobility planning, raise the awareness of actors at the city level to the issue of climate change by linking, of course, the carbon quantification of urban mobility planning approaches to obtaining climate finance. This initiative has made it possible to have a new generation of urban mobility plans called sustainable urban mobility plans, targeting, of course, major cities in Morocco nowadays. Completion also of a tram and BRT program is also a good experience. In fact, many tramway lines are currently in service in Morocco, in Rabat and in Casablanca, for example, transporting more than 16 million passengers per year. This program is gradually extended to other agglomerations exceeding 500,000 inhabitants. At the end, the renewal of the road transport fleet project establishes bonuses for the scrapping and renewal of heavy vehicles that are at least 15 years old. This initiative has been extended to include public transport, such as, for example, taxis. It should be noted that this operation has reduced carbon emissions by nearly 3 million tons from 2007 and 2015. Well, there is a lot to share with you through the Moroccan experience, but time is limited, and I will now spend some time showing you some key cases or some examples, and I will start with Rabat Sali Tramway. The program comprises 4 lines in the long term, as shown in the map in different color, and you can see like lines in bold are the current achieved lines. So as the first line of 26 kilometers in service in the form of X or a mark, as you see here in the map, and the total cost of what has been achieved till now is around $530 million, meaning that 1 kilometer of tramway costs around like $20 million per kilometer, all included, of course, infrastructure and equipment. The second case study I would like to share with you is about Casablanca tramway and BRT project, which is the most important one. First, Casablanca is the largest city and the economic capital of Morocco. Its population is around like 4 million. Casablanca has large public transport with dedicated lines program. In fact, the Casablanca Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan recommended the implementation of an integrated public transport with dedicated line project of 160 kilometers by 2030, including tramways, RER, and BRTs. Casablanca city has programmed a budget of $18 billion from 2015 and 2020 to spend in mass public transportation. Well, tramway speaking, 4 lines are already in services, 2 more lines soon. The total now is around like 76 kilometers, costing around like 1.5 billion USD. BRT or Casa Busway, called also Casa Busway speaking, 2 lines will be launched very soon, The length is about like 24 kilometers, and it costs around like 190 million USD. And of course, I need to mention that these BRTs run on diesel Euro 6. The last case study is about the unique trolley bus in Morocco, located in Marrakech city. By the way, Marrakech is one of the tourist destinations in the world. Well, motivated by its position as the city hosting the COP 2020 in 2016, the city embarked on a project of pilot electric BRT or trolley bus in motion charging trolley buses. So Marrakech has now like 10 18-meter bus. Dedicated infrastructure is about like 88 kilometers long, but they have like another program to develop further the infrastructure. It transports around like 60,000 passengers per day and powered by photovoltaic solar energy installed in the south of Morocco. Other lines are expected to start operations in the future. And as a conclusion and reflections, I think that Morocco is trying to overcome the problems of coordination, financing, and organization of sustainable urban mobility planning, including, of course, in general, the transport services. Further development of sustainable financing mechanisms, infrastructure facilitating multimodality and smooth transition to sustainable mobility and green energy are needed, of course. Next to that, low carbon urban infrastructure development and financing should be a real priority in MENA region and Africa. We also urge towards global and national strategies for building resilient transport systems in major cities in developing countries. We need to focus on developing countries. At the end, supporting also multi-level cooperation for implementation of transport strategies, accompanied, of course, with a feasible capacity building program is an essential need nowadays. This code is saying that the city design are like focused on cars is not a sustainable model. Well, on this, I thank you for your attention.